Hi, today we're talking Irish whiskeys. Hi, I'm Tim from Elma Wine and Liquor. Today I'm here to talk a little bit about Irish whiskey. We've done a video in the past about whiskeys in general and what makes them kind of in general different between Scotches and Irish and bourbons. But today we're going to focus just on Irish whiskey since St. Patrick's Day is coming up soon. So Irish whiskey, to start with, has to come from the island of Ireland. It can be Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland, but it has to come from the island. Or it has to be distilled on the island, to be more specific. So it's made from malted barley. That barley is traditionally malted without peat or without any smoke getting infused into the barley, which is one of the biggest contradictions between Scotch and Irish whiskey. The Scotch like to keep that peat, use that peat smoke, and keep that smoke into the malting process so that Scotches have that smoky finish. With Irish whiskey, they vent the smoke, they don't use a lot of peat, and so that what you end up with is a much cleaner, smoother finish, and not really any smoke on the finish. Of course, there are exceptions to that. There are some smaller distilleries that make a peated Irish whiskey, but those are fewer and far between. Irish whiskey in general, they also has to be aged for at least 3 years in oak barrels. That's the state law. That's the minimum that it has to be aged in order to be called an Irish whiskey. You will also find, as with Scotches and other types of whiskeys and other liquors, that some of them will put longer, they'll spend longer times in oak barrels. This one in particular is a Jameson 12-year-old. They do that to make the whiskey even smoother, impart more of those oak notes, the vanilla, and some of the richness from what they often use is used bourbon casks, so they get some of that corn notes as well. One of the things lately, Irish whiskeys have been gaining popularity quite rapidly again. Going back into history in the US, Irish whiskey pre-Prohibition was much stronger than Scotch. During Prohibition, obviously there wasn't much of an import process anymore, and coming out of Prohibition, Scotch kind of jumped in front and took the reins. So in the US, up until recently, Irish whiskey hadn't had a very strong following. But over the past few years, not only in the US, but worldwide, Irish whiskey's been on the rise again. Up till a few years ago, there were only less than a handful of distilleries on the island of Ireland, between 3 and 5. At the beginning of 2017, there are roughly 16 distilleries in operation now. And there's even more planning to come online. Things like Teeling and Glendalough are some of the newer distilleries coming online. As with the craft spirit movement in the U.S., Irish whiskeys are also kind of embracing that craft spirit and trying some new experimental type products. Jameson has their new Caskmate series. What they did with this first one in particular is they took some of their used barrels after they've aged the Jameson in it. They took the empty barrels and shipped them off to a brewery. That brewery then aged a stout in those barrels for a few months. They've drained them off, they sold their stout as a barrel-aged stout, and then they sent the barrels back to the Jameson distillery where Jameson finished their whiskey in those barrels so that it picked up some of those stout notes. So this is the stout edition of the Caskmates. They also have barrels at breweries throughout the U.S. Right now, aging IPAs, pale ales, and some different types of beers. So over the next few years, we'll be seeing more additions to the Caskmate series. So just to sum it all up, Irish whiskey has to be from malted barley, has to be distilled on the island of Ireland, and has to be aged at least 3 years in oak barrels. Thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate all the great feedback and comments we've been getting. we look forward to hearing from you soon, and please let us know what other topics you'd like us to cover. Cheers.